Thank you for tuning in to this webcast. My name is Jonathan Foust. Absolutely delighted that you are here. Got a very, very cool interview coming up after some quick announcements and then a short meditation. First of all, big thank you to the Insight Meditation Community of Washington for streaming this, and to our producer, Glenn Harrison, for making all this possible. Big thank you to Rita Moran, our mindful movement leader. If you'd like to join Rita, you can get the link for her Zoom class on my Facebook page or on my website. Starts at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time, brings you up to right about now for this class. Let's see, what else? I've got a newsletter if you're interested. That's there. Also, just to say, yet again, this is all offered in the spirit of generosity. No ads, no fee, no payments, nothing required other than a interest. I've received a lot through the spirit of generosity through these teachings, and it's my pleasure to be able to offer this freely. And if you feel at all inspired to support this, thank you. Really appreciate it. You can make a donation through my website. Let's see. I think that's about it. There may be room on the wait list for the Year of Living Mindfully. That starts in September. You can check that out. That link is also on my website. So, brief meditation before we launch into this conversation with Jeff Fajans on the nature of flow. Flow is this state where it's a state of absorption, and there are certain criteria that go into it. And that's what we're going to talk about. Some of the challenges that show up when you're wanting to get into the flow state, what blocks creativity, things like that. So let's do a short meditation. The talk, the interview is a little bit long, so we'll do a shorter meditation, but we'll explore in this practice, what are some of the elements that bring you into a sense of flow? One of the first elements is present moment awareness. So if you like, you can close your eyes. And if you like, you can take a few moments and just sense, how does your body want to move or stretch or shift or change? Let your body adjust in any way that feels good. To help you with a sense of arriving in focus, you might bring your attention now to your breathing. Notice where you feel the breath, and notice how intimately you can feel the breath on the inside. One of the tricks or hacks or best practices for cultivating present moment awareness is to combine two elements, and that is concentration with relaxation. So wherever you feel the breath right now, can you begin to relax your breath? You might explore, just for the next minute or so, lengthening the exhalation a little bit longer than the inhalation. Notice on the breath moving out, if it's possible to relax and feel even more on the inside. Feel the weight of the arms. Feel the face expressionless. Sense from the inside the palms of the hands. Can you feel the soles of the feet and the heels? And now you might like to narrow your attention. Is there a specific point in this feeling of the breath on the inside that you might rest your attention? For some, it's the tip of the nostrils, or maybe the septum, maybe the belly. And for the next few rounds of breath, just notice how intimately you can feel the experience at this point of contact. Now you might just sense with all that's happening, can you feel what it's like to take the seat of the witness, to be the observer of this phenomena of breath and sensation? Can you imagine now the breath in the foreground and in the background, everything that's changing? And can you feel this balance of present moment awareness and the perception of change and simply tracking what's changing? For the next few minutes, you might open your awareness to what we might call flow, the flow of changing sensations, of sound, the felt sense inside, the perception of touch, the flow of different thought forms, the flow of different moods and emotions, the flow of different states, everything changing. And yet you are the witness. When you notice your mind lost in some attachment or identification with what's changing, lost in a thought form or commentary, just gently bring your attention back to this felt sense of the breath on the inside. And pause and rest here. And then, as it feels appropriate, relax, widen your attention again to this sense of flow. And in this remaining minute or so, you might notice now, could you relax even more inside? What could soften or relax or let go? And is it possible to allow your experience to flow naturally, not trying to control, but just simply noticing the natural shifting nature of phenomena and letting things be just as they are? Noticing the quality of presence, of what it feels like to simply let it all be. And you might imagine if just for a moment there was nothing to change, nothing to add, nothing to take away from this moment. As you're ready, you can deepen your breath. And as you're ready, you can very, very gently let your body move and shift and adjust, and you can begin your transition. Welcome back. I feel incredibly lucky, incredibly graced in my life in that I live a pretty creative life, putting together these Dharma talks, creating programs, my photography, creating products that can support people. And in that creative life, of course, I encounter lots of, shall we say, ecstatic moments of creativity, along with equally non ecstatic moments of feeling blocked, feeling stuck. I've always been intrigued by the work of Csikszentmihalyi. I know I butchered the name, but he wrote the book Flow a number of years ago. And those moments when you are in flow are extraordinary. And the moments when you're trying to get into flow can be excruciating. So I had a great conversation, which I'm going to share with you here with Dr. Jeff Fajans, who is a creative coach who had the opportunity to study with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, I believe is how it's pronounced. And he works with people on how to access flow. And as a meditator, he's got some very interesting observations. And I think you'll find this helpful because when you're in the flow state, it's a magic state. You can make it happen, but there are certain factors, or as he calls them, levers, that can help you to cultivate what it means to be in this state of absorption and creativity. I hope you find this conversation helpful. I really enjoyed it. Many blessings and enjoy. Okay, ready to go?
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you so much for being here. I'm so appreciative of you. I've been following your work for quite a while, and your work touches on a lot of stuff I personally find fascinating, just for myself and my own relationship with creativity, but the whole concept of mindfulness and flow. So thanks so much for your time here.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on. I've been following your work as well. It's been really helpful and grounding for me, especially these past 6 months. And yeah, it's awesome to connect with you.
So I think rather than me trying to come up with like a short, eloquent introduction of you, how would you introduce yourself in terms of your background and what you bring to this?
Yeah, I call myself a creative momentum coach. And I'm here to help creative people bring their biggest ideas to life, whether they're writing a book or screenplay, launching a business, starting a meaningful passion project or side hustle. I love creativity and innovation, and I love when people have the chance, an opportunity to fully express who they are and what they want to bring to the world. It's kind of grounded in almost genuine happiness. It's like, what can we contribute to the world? I'm trying to help people bring that out. And so I work with a lot of creative people and entrepreneurs, people that have big ideas, big ambitions, strong passions, strong purposes, but they might need help with the follow through or the execution, the consistency, overcoming self doubt. And a lot of these people, they have this deep desire to optimize or make the most of their time, right?
Yeah.
And so they can bring their ideas to life. And so I partner with people one-on-one, group coaching settings to help people with this.
So this intersection of creativity, mindfulness and manifestation, it's endlessly fascinating to me. And I'm just curious, what drew you to this as like your life work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always been pretty creative and imaginative. And early on in my life, um, I was always around music. My dad was a guitar player, and my mom and my dad loved all sorts of music. So every Friday night, they'd be spinning different records when I was growing up, blasting music, jamming to it, dancing, having fun. So I was exposed early on to a lot of different genres of music. I loved everything. I thought it was so fascinating that you could have jazz, listening to Coltrane or Miles Davis, what they were doing, and then listening to the Rolling Stones or the Beatles and hearing what they were doing, and then hearing classical music, folk music, Grateful Dead, all these amazing bands and artists, and it really energized me. And so I picked up guitar around 11 and got into lessons. And the more I learned, the better I got, the more I practiced, the more I wanted to go deeper and deeper. And at some point around college, when I was in Texas, I was trying to be the best, most creative guitar player in the town, right? So I was like, what can give me an edge? And so I stumbled onto NLP and then hypnosis. I started doing hypnotherapy with this wise sage guy out in Lubbock, Texas, that really had a lot of impact on me. And I just kept getting deeper and deeper into psychology and spiritual side of music and creativity. Started meditating, and that got me into the book Flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. And that really resonated with me because it described my experience spot on with playing guitar in bands and playing and performing at night and taking that guitar solo and just feeling in the zone like I was Neo in the Matrix, and just got deeper and deeper into that. Yada, yada, yada. I was in a toxic sales job after college, depressed and burnt out and wondering what I was going to do with my life. So I went to my favorite coffee shop with my favorite book, Flow, turned to the back of the book and saw about the author. And here was Mihai Csikszentmihalyi co-founded this positive psychology graduate program out in Claremont, California. And I knew I just had to get out there. He was my favorite author. Everything he did was just, it felt like it was speaking to me and describing my experience and also the experience I wanted to bring to the world. That really negative job I had where I couldn't be creative, where I couldn't be authentic, where I was micromanaged. It, it triggered something in me where I didn't want anyone else to feel like that with their work. And so I went to grad school and was trying to figure out a way to combine my passions for creativity and helping people and mindfulness and just very introspective practices to the table. And that's one thing led to another. I got into different elements of coaching and training and development and leadership development, where now, that's what I do. It's going to bring it all together into coaching, different coaching modalities that really integrate not just the science for my PhD research and everything, but practice and, drawing from my own experience as a music creator and entrepreneur and just kind of the artistic side. So I try to blend science, the art, psychology, practicality into everything I do to help my clients and myself, right? Like it kind of became the coach that I needed for myself to
Yeah.
help, and then
That's the
started
interesting thing,
practicing
isn't it?
with
That
others. Yeah.
what we offer to others is what we most need for ourselves.
Yeah.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about this kind of nebulous thing called flow. You saw, it's very, very cool. You saw like the flow state modeled, as a kid, with the music and creativity and all of that. And and then, wow, you really got this, you just got to take a deep dive into that. So I'm wondering, how would you define the flow state? Not just conceptually, but also experientially.
Yeah. So it's it's where you the experience is amazing. It's one of those peak experiences, the optimal experience of life is how Mihai Csikszentmihalyi would describe it. So it's where you're so absorbed in what you're doing. It's this merging of action and awareness. You're not really thinking, you're just kind of automatically responding and reacting and being proactive with your environment. It feels like you're in the matrix. It feels like time is flying, like anything else could be going on around you, but whatever it is you're doing, whether you're hiking or climbing a mountain, playing basketball, writing, playing music, it's you're it's that hyper state of awareness and present momentness where it's you just feel locked in, right? Like so with jazz, it's like playing jazz. It's very improvisational, but you also have the skills to respond to the moment, and it's it's an amazing experience. It's just that peak experience in life where your attention is so hyper focused on the present. You're not worrying about the past, you're not thinking about the future, you're not thinking, do I have food on my face? Is anything that you're just doing and being simultaneously.
What would you say? I mean, it all sounds good. And I think it's a state that for many people, they experience it briefly. It becomes something that, we, some of our greatest stories are around stories of being in the flow state. What would you say most people understand about flow, especially in relationship as a meditator in relationship to meditation or spiritual practice? Like, what are the most common misunderstandings, would you say?
Oh yeah, sure. So one misunderstanding is that flow is almost a surprise or a gift from the creative gods to you, right? Like you can't control it, you can't create the conditions for it. It's completely out of your control or influence, and it just happens or not, it doesn't happen. And that's one misunderstanding. There are certain conditions that you can pay attention to and influence and modify and adjust to help you get into that state. Just
So it's
perhaps
not
like,
just a state of grace. It's actually that there are conditions, there are factors that go into cultivating it.
yes, there's some factors that you can optimize for or influence. There is grace to it. Like you do have to, it can be very paradoxical. There's stuff you can influence and control, but that you also need to have that letting go factor as well, right? It's very paradoxical in some ways. Another misconception might be that what might it be? Well, I guess in relation to meditation, it's all about attention, right? It's all about the quality and the focus and the directionality of your attention. If your attention's fragmented, if it's scattered, it's hard to get into to flow. And so there's different things we can do to help focus that attention or influence that attention, narrow it in scope. But yeah, like mindfulness, it's all about attention, right? The
Uh,
quality of our attention, what we're focusing on.
so I often say, because I'm fascinated with the idea of intuition, like how does intuition happen? And one of my stock phrases is, you can't make it happen, but
Yeah.
you can cultivate the optimal conditions for it to happen. So
Yes.
what would you say for you if you're kind of wanting to, let's say, either in your meditation practice or you're working on a song or something like that? What are the common conditions that sort of create the riverbanks for the flow state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's a few, there's six different flow levers, what I call 'em, that you can be mindful about. And that is where it starts is the awareness of how these conditions are showing up for you or not, making small changes, either removing obstacles or enriching your experience and environment to create these conditions. So the six flow levers are: one is complete focus. This is about your environment? Can you eliminate distractions, notifications? Can you protect time where you're not going to be interrupted? Can you block out enough time to allow yourself to ease into, kind of warm up into that flow state? It's hard to get into flow in just 5 minutes, right? A lot of times we need our mind to settle and figure out what we're doing. And so having this element of time is important, minimizing distractions, setting the intention that, hey, I'm not going to multitask here. I'm not going to try to do 20 things all at once in this 1 hour that I have. And then just cultivating like the state of ease. Like you're not rushing, you're not trying too hard. You are just letting go, you're settling, trusting yourself that if you get into it, you'll get warmed up and you'll gradually get into that state of flow. So the complete focus is one. Having clear goals or tools is probably that second lever you really want to focus on. And what I mean by clear goals and rules, pretty simple. Like, do you have a priority? Do you have that starting point? Do you know what you're going to work on during that session? Say if you're having a creative work session, if you come in, sit down, and you are overwhelmed, like, should I work on this project or this project or this one or this one or this one or this one? That fragments your attention. It makes it harder to get locked in on that directionality or goal. If you feel like your project is too complex, like say you're writing a novel, that can cause overwhelm and the clarity of your goals becomes fuzzier. That can cause an interference to flow. So making that sharper and more more clear, more specific, tinier to a goal, like I'm just going to write 750 words, or I'm going to write the very first paragraph. Um, that's one element that if you have these goals or rules, then that's going to help you get into flow. And that's why sports, we hear people getting into flow so often with sports is the rules of the game are defined. There's those parameters, there's constraints, there's certain things you can do, certain things you can't do. The goal on how to win is very clear. The goal on making progress is very clear. That's another flow lever is there clear and immediate progress? Like, do you have your task designed where every step I take, I know if I'm getting closer to that objective or goal of mine, right? So like
You got the
this
goal
is
and you're
like,
getting feedback.
yeah, you're getting immediate feedbacks. And with music, that might be just of the vibe or the intuition, like this feels right.
Hmm.
That sounds good. With sports, it might be, oh, I just scored a basket. I'm ahead of my opponent. Or football, I'm 5 yards closer to the end zone. I'm getting there. And so this is really important. One thing we can do in terms of clear goals and rules is like one of the most practical tips is just make whatever it is you're working on really small and tiny. Just identify that starting point. Like right when I sit down to write this song, which is a big complex thing, I'm just going to start with the rhythm guitar part. Boom, I can get into that. And, you have that clear point. You don't waste time. You don't allow the self-doubt to creep in. The should I do this or should I do that? Like you just get into it and then you trust yourself to get into that flow to let the momentum carry you forward,
Hmm.
paying attention to how things are going. Um, yeah. So, I mean, those are a few things. There's some other elements. Like one of my favorite levers is just trying to make an autotelic experience. And so this is about, would you do the activity just for the sake of doing it? Right? Do you enjoy the process? Do you find it engaging or interesting? Does it pique your curiosity? Do you feel a sense of learning meaningfulness and growth from it. A lot of times, a lot of the clients and people I work with, they're very focused on productivity and they think I need to be more disciplined. I need more
Mhm.
willpower.
Mhm. So,
But
so they
you could
forget the element of joy, of like
do
the
it, yes,
element of discovery.
exactly. And so, like, paradoxically, if you can infuse more joy and fun into what you're doing, and
Hmm.
that is going to help you experience flow more, and with more probability you'll experience flow, and that will help you carry over and sustain your momentum and want to come back and want to keep working on it. So we don't, it's, if we can design our tasks and work to have that enjoyment, that autotelic experience where you're just having fun and enjoying the process. You're not trying to hit a certain outcome or see if your boss or someone's going to say, "Oh, you're really great for this, for doing this." That's such a fun thing to be mindful about with what we're doing. Like, how can I make this more fun?
Mm.
How can I enjoy this more? How can I make it easier and just approach it with a greater state of relaxation? And that's my one of my favorite flow levers, and it usually works. It's hard for some high achievement oriented people where they're like, I need to be more disciplined. But no, you just like, it's not necessarily about you. You can take the pressure off you and be mindful of how you can infuse joy into your process or into the work you're doing or into your environment. It's a,
No, there's an interesting
uh,
analogy when the Buddha was describing, exploring in his meditation practice. Initially, when he went off to practice, it was around renunciation. It was around denying the body food, denying the body comfort, and that created transcendent experiences. But then he had this memory when he was a little kid, when when there was the spring celebration when they were plowing the fields, of sitting under an apple tree, or I think it was an apple tree, and just sitting under the fragrance of the tree. And he thought, is it possible to use a pleasant, joyful memory as an entry into the present moment? And then that became a very important tool when it comes to the absorption practices, is to seek the pleasure and actually follow the pleasure, which can open you up into like these immeasurable states of being.
mm,
That's seriously cool.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah. And with the creative personality, our brains are wired to seek out novelty and excitement and variety. And so it is working with the creative brain to not try to make it more disciplined and obedient, because the creative brain, we also have this rebel part within us where there's too much rigidity or too much constraint, even if it's ourself, we'll just rebel and say, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this.
Hmm.
Watch me. But if we can work with the creative brain, infuse that joy, then it wants to pay attention to that. It wants to move towards that and experience that. And so, whatever is creates that sensation for you, it's different for everyone, is something to be mindful of and pay attention to. It's like, how can I make this more attractive from an intentional standpoint? So I just want to do this, right? I want to write my book. I want to launch my business. I want to make that song. Um, the discipline approach is, it can work sometimes, and it's definitely something to be cultivated that can help. But it's the model is flow, like the metaphor is the river, right? Like, how do you just make the current naturally go towards wherever you want to go? And that's what we're trying to do with these
Yeah.
flow experiences, is make it that intrinsically motivating experience.
Yes, motivated. You're motivated by the moment itself. So one way that we can pay attention in meditation is through focus, and that's, you've kind of spoken about that, like define what the rules are, so you're paying attention on purpose. And some traditions, they focus exclusively on that. The whole idea is just keep drilling into what is the present moment, and that can take you places. But then you get other traditions that say, well, it's exactly the opposite. It's the reason why you're not happy is you're trying. So relax, it's already here. And I'm just curious, the play of focus versus openness or open awareness. I think you've already spoken to it a little bit, but uh, how do they coexist when you're cultivating the flow state?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think this is where the elements, so part of flow is finding, there's a graph. If you Google flow chart, you'll see this 2 by 2 graph. One side is challenge, one is skills. So flow is all about finding the right balance of challenge and skill. And if it's imbalanced, if the challenge is too high, then the state is anxiety, worry. If the skill is too high, then venture off into boredom and apathy. And so it is, I think I'm just thinking out loud here. So let me put this together. And so I think that it's a similar way. So you do you need that relaxation, you need that foundational base of skill or focus, but at the same time, you're open and flexible to the experience around you, which might coincide with the challenge. Like it's the interaction of self and environment or task at hand. And so it is a bit of both. So for example, with music, I need a certain level of skill before I can get into that deep flow state. And that might be that foundational base. I've spent time focused, practicing. And when I'm coming in, say I'm playing with my band, there's this level of focus. I know I'm going to have this guitar solo, let's say, or this jam part. I know the chord progression, I know what the drummer is playing, I know what the bass is playing. So there's those parameters of focus. It's not too tight, it's not too loose. So there's that element of some focus, but then just being aware of what's happening and responsive to the moment. Whatever note I play first will inform what I play next. And it might be different every time. It's very improvisational, but within a set of parameters and focus, if that makes sense. That's usually where
Yeah.
we experience that highest level of flow, whereas there is some chance of the unexpected. And that's what makes it kind of exciting.
Yeah.
And we're curious and it helps lock in our attention. But it's not too undefined.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing you say, just through the lens of kind of like my training, is the art kind of in Buddhism, the articulation of the middle way. As you said, not too tight, not too loose.
Mm-hmm.
But also in cultivating the flow state, when you're aware of the levers, I like to think of like mindfulness is this practice of self-awareness and self-diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
It's like what's happening right now, and then how does this moment want me to be with it? And so it's sort of recognizing, I'm going to check out the graph. Maybe I can put a link for that in the show notes of like
Yeah.
recognizing, like, oh, I've set the bar a little too high in terms of the skill that's required, you know, or maybe I need to adjust this in terms of cultivating that state. That's
Mm-hmm.
very, very cool.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting to think about the differences between flow and just different meditational practices and introspection. There's a lot of similarities, but there's also just some different experience. I'm not as deep of a meditator as you are, so you might have better experiences around the differences and similarities of the flow state and various meditation practices. But it's all about attention and how it's utilized and what we're trying to do. And even with like music, like I may get into flow and doing an improvisational piece, or I may get into flow just practicing a certain lick over and over and over again and
Mm.
speeding up the tempo and increasing the challenge that way. So it can be very different depending on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so it's a, yeah, it's fascinating. And it's really helpful. Like all this comes back to self-awareness. Like what's gonna get me in flow will be different from you or anyone else. Paying attention to the patterns and commonalities. Like, why do I get in flow when I'm doing music with other people, but not by myself? I don't know. Or why does writing fiction get me into flow, but nonfiction doesn't? Why does looking at a data spreadsheet and creating Excel formulas and automations get me into flow, but writing a grocery list not? Like there's a lot to dissect and self-diagnose with all these things, and there might be certain patterns
Hmm.
and commonalities that you can recognize
Yeah.
across very different activities. And
I'll
yeah.
often offer, different inquiries with like, what's between you and feeling happy, and then really drilling into just naming, oh, there's this, there's this, there's this. And that's a very powerful inquiry as well. Like, what's between you and feeling flow? And then when you name it, you recognize it, and you have the possibility of bringing awareness to it and shifting your
Mhm.
relationship to that. Where our time is flying, but I wanted to ask you because you're working all the time with people who are in the midst of creative projects. Can you share a story or example of someone they kind of like broke through some long-standing creative impasse?
Yeah, sure. So let's see. One of my clients, recent client, she is launching a business. She's building an app. She's making this really cool hiking outdoors community app thing. It's I can't say the name. It's not out there yet, but she's basically a startup founder, and she is from India. She moved to Canada. She's away from her family. She's doing this business on her own. And she came to me, she realized, wow, like this is a lot to make happen. I feel isolated. I have so many ideas. I don't know how to focus them. I, I have a lot of self-doubt and imposter syndrome. Like, what am I doing? I'm away from everyone that I love trying to make this crazy idea happen. Like, I need some help. And so I act as almost like a strategic thought partner, advisor, encourager, cheerleader, accountability, drill sergeant, coach, all in one. Depends on what the client needs at the time. But what we've been working on together is really taking the overwhelm and focusing it on key priorities each week, distilling that down into key actions and steps to take each day, defining certain habits, like reaching out to her network or mentors that she wants to do a little bit every day, and finding time and space in her day to make all these things happen. There's a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity and complexity in creative work. So a lot of what I help people do is try to simplify and ease the pressure and help clarify next steps so they create momentum. That's why I call myself a creative momentum coach. So I help people gain the sense and design the sense of momentum with their creative work. There's different studies in the psychology of creativity that the sense of consistent progress is one of the most motivating states that a creative person can experience. It boosts their confidence, it boosts their happiness, boosts their productivity, and just it feels good to know your project is coming to life. It gives you that sense of inevitability, even though the task may feel daunting and insurmountable. That sense of momentum grounds us, and it gives us that energy and that confidence that says, hey, I can do big, bold things if I can, utilize my attention and shape and work with it and move things forward little by little, even if it's not the perfect ideal state that I have in mind. So it is all about just understanding the psychology of creative entrepreneurial work and helping people accept the nature of creative work and move forward anyways. I don't know if that makes sense. So we're
Yeah.
working on just a lot of habits, a lot of mindset stuff, a lot of getting things done, and how do we take crazy, ambiguous goals and identify what's
Yeah.
going to bring us the most momentum.
One of the things that my takeaway from kind of following your work has been kind of the recognition that whenever there's any sense of um, struggle, you know, there's some unmet need. There's something I'm needing that's not happening.
Hmm,
And I'm just imagining that you're part of that kind of analysis. What is it that someone's needing that's not happening, that's shutting down the whole creative process?
right.
So if we have just a couple of minutes left, if someone wanted to deepen their relationship between mindfulness and creativity today, where should they start?
One simple place to start might be identifying and noticing your sources of resistance or the narratives around the resistance you experience, feelings, being very mindful. So let's say you're writing a book, or that's one of your goals. So when you go to think about your project, oh, I'm writing this book, or I'm sitting down to write this book, a lot of times there's a sensation in your stomach or your chest or your throat or that feels uncomfortable. You start feeling that resistance the closer you get to actually working on whatever it is you want to work on. So if you notice that, if you pause, and if you're a mindfulness meditation practitioner, right, I love your rain model, exploring that resistance, like what's happening, recognizing that. Maybe you want to write it down, keep a journal of all these things so you can identify patterns later. But in the moment, you can just recognize what's happening, you accept what's happening or allow, right? You investigate it, and then you ask, like, what do you need? Like, what can help? And so the RAI is what you can do. And then if you need some help with the N, like what are some ideas to help nurture, go overcome this resistance more quickly? That's, there's a lot of different strategies or techniques that I'd be happy to share with you. If you want to email me, anyone listening, shoot me an email about some of the resistance you're experiencing or noticing with whatever meaningful, bold, creative projects you're working on. I can give you some free tools to help support your practice, little tricks and strategies and techniques. But yeah, the noticing of what that resistance is trying to tell you. A lot of times it's a very deep evolutionary need. Like, this doesn't feel safe. Like, I'm putting myself out there. I could be rejected from my tribe. I don't know what's going to happen next. You know, this project requires me, like, it makes me feel like a beginner and incompetent, and I don't like that. Like, I have to learn how to market this. Like, oh my gosh, like, I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm not in control of whether people are going to respond to this or not.
Hmm.
There's so many just deep-seated
It strikes me that this
things.
is very much like, the whole hero's journey.
Mm.
You feel a call, you ignore it. You feel the call, you ignore it. You feel the call, you ignore it. You feel the call, say, okay, something in me just has to do this. And
Yeah.
you say yes to it. And then immediately you are beset by obstacles.
Yeah. Yep.
So it's very much around embrace the resistance, to really
Exactly.
explore. Like, here's something that's calling me forward. Um, Let me just name and investigate everything that's arising that's between me and what I'm moving toward, which is really
Exactly.
it's the hero's journey. It's
I love that. Yeah. I like to tell people, hey, all this supposedly negative stuff, this uncomfortable stuff that you're experiencing, this resistance, that's actually a really positive indicator that you're doing something meaningful. You're doing something that's can help you experience a sense of growth and fulfillment. It's activating your creativity. You're doing creative work, right? If you didn't have that radical uncertainty, that gut churn that the founder of Radiolab, that's how he described this feeling. If you don't have that, then you might not be on the path of growth and fulfillment. You might be, putting something off that's really important to you.
yeah,
There's always these obstacles at any level of success you face, right? Like it's just that challenge skill level. You finish that one project and now you're thinking of your next one, even if that last one was successful, all these same feelings and sources of resistance, they come back in a little bit different combination. You have to deal with it again. So it is about making that choice and accepting like this is what it is, but I can navigate it. I can build my skills to mindfully and uh, work with it and do something creative.
yes, remembering it's our challenges that grow us,
Hmm.
and remembering to embrace that. So, tell me just a little bit in our remaining minutes here. How can people, if they're drawn, how can they work with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my website to learn more about my coaching. I also offer these community experiences throughout the year called the 30-day Creative Momentum Challenge. And this is where creators from around the world, we get together via Zoom and Discord, and we're committing to 30 days of progress. So, doing something big or small towards bringing that meaningful project of yours to life or building that creative habit, like writing every day, painting every day. It's a really fun experience. There's a link I'll share for that. And then if you want to chat about any of the blocks or projects, challenges you're experiencing, if you want to geek out on flow, go a little more deeper into flow or the psychology of creative work. And I'd love to connect with anyone for a free 45-minute coaching session where we'd love to help you figure out some next steps to help bring your creative idea to life, whatever it is. So those are the best places to connect with me.
That's great. Well, thank you, Jeff. I'll have your information in the show notes. But I've really appreciated your offerings. I've learned a lot around my own process, and I know that it's when we feel creative, we feel alive. And
Yep.
just thank you for bringing a lot of aliveness on the planet.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for
Great.
having me,
Thank you
Jonathan.
so much. Awesome.